Ella, here's something that's been keeping me up at night. How is it that 70 million Americans can look at the same person and see completely different moral truths?
Today, we're exploring how our society lost its shared moral compass and the fascinating historical journey that brought us here.
That's such an intriguing question to unpack. You know what's really fascinating? To understand this, we actually need to go back to ancient Athens.
Well, here's what's mind-blowing about ancient societies. They didn't have existential crises about their purpose in life. Your role was essentially predetermined, and with it came a clear moral code.
So if you were a teacher or warrior, there were established standards of excellence that everyone understood and accepted?
Exactly right. And let me share a modern example that perfectly illustrates this. When Ryne Sandberg gave his Baseball Hall of Fame speech in 2005, he talked about playing the game right, not for rewards, but because that's what you're supposed to do.
Hmm, that's really interesting. Could you share more about what he specifically said?
Well, he said something really powerful. I was in awe every time I walked onto the field. That's respect. I was taught you never, ever disrespect your opponents or your teammates or your organization or your manager, and never, ever your uniform. It wasn't about personal preference. It was about living up to established standards.
That's such a clear example of inherited moral tradition. But something clearly changed between then and now, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this is where the story gets really interesting. The Enlightenment comes along and introduces this revolutionary idea of individual autonomy. And while this gave us amazing things like democracy and individual rights, it also started to erode our shared moral frameworks.
You know what fascinates me about that? The Enlightenment thinkers were actually trying to solve a specific problem: the religious wars and bloodshed of their time.
Right. They essentially said, let's privatize morality, let people choose their own values, and we'll create neutral systems like democracy and law to manage our differences. But here's where philosopher Alasdair MacIntyre's insights become crucial.
Oh, tell me more about MacIntyre's perspective on this.
Well, he had this brilliant thought experiment. Imagine if all science books were shredded and scientists killed off, leaving us with just random fragments of scientific knowledge. He argued that's basically what happened to our moral knowledge. We still use the words, but we've lost the coherent system they were part of.
That's such a powerful metaphor. So we're all walking around using words like virtue and purpose, but without any shared understanding of what they actually mean?
Exactly. And in this vacuum, we've developed what MacIntyre called emotivism, the idea that moral judgments are just expressions of personal preference. Instead of saying, this is right because of these universal principles, we're basically saying, I feel this is right.
So how does this help explain our current political and moral divisions?
Well, think about it. When we can't resolve moral differences through reasoned argument, we're left with only two options: coercion or manipulation. We either try to force others to accept our view, or we try to manipulate them into wanting what we want.
That really helps explain why our public debates have become so toxic, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really interesting. When someone like Trump comes along who doesn't even attempt to speak the language of traditional morality, but instead speaks purely in terms of preference, I want, and power, I have the leverage. Many people don't see this as problematic because we're all operating in this framework where morality has been reduced to personal preference.
That's fascinating because it suggests this isn't just about one person or political movement. It's about a much deeper cultural shift that affects all of us.
Exactly. And here's what's really crucial to understand. MacIntyre argued that this moral incoherence is built into the very structure of modern society. We're all swimming in these same cultural waters, regardless of our political affiliation.
So what's the solution? How do we move forward from here?
Well, that's where the concept of pluralism comes in. This idea that we can hold multiple frameworks in tension. We can value individual autonomy and Enlightenment ideals while also recognizing the importance of shared moral traditions and standards of excellence.
Like Sandberg with baseball, individual achievement within a framework of shared values?
Exactly. And I think this offers some hope for addressing our current moral crisis. Instead of trying to go backwards or forcing everyone into one moral framework, We can work on rebuilding shared moral vocabularies while maintaining respect for diversity and individual rights.
That sounds promising, but how do we actually do that in practice?
I think it starts with education, not just technical or career training, but real moral education, teaching people how to think about ethical questions, how to balance individual desires with community needs, how to recognize and uphold standards of excellence in whatever role they take on.
That's really given me a lot to think about. It's amazing how understanding this historical context helps make sense of so many current issues.
And what's really powerful about this perspective is that it suggests ways forward that don't require us to abandon either modern freedoms or traditional moral wisdom. We just need to find better ways to bring them together. This is Malcolm.
And I'm Ella. We are your AI presenters for Sports Bites. Sports Bites is a production of the Shoulder Roll Virtual Boxing Podcast Network. Have a marvelous day.